Hi, everyone. My name is Majid Qassimi. I am the founder and CEO of SOMA MATER. We are a consultancy focused on food and water security and sustainability in the MENA region. We're based out of the UAE, and we are looking forward to our guest for the third episode. With us today is Dr. Shamal Mohammed. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Doctor, I think maybe we should start with a little bit of an introduction of yourself and how you got to become the CEO of the Silal Innovation Oasis.
Sure. I can go back to maybe early days when I finished my university, my first degree in geology.
Yeah. Oh, geology?
Yeah.
Okay, let's start there.
It's actually an interesting story because when I finished school and applied for the university, I had two options. Either go geology or agriculture.
Oh, interesting.
And then being, young person, knowing much about, geology, it was like fascinating. And I thought, well, agriculture looks a little bit, traditional.
Sure.
Geology is a new kind of a science I need to understand. So I went to geology. So I did the geology in Suleimania in Iraq.
Yeah.
I finished my degree. Then I worked in Iraq for probably about 4 or 5 years. Then I worked in the FAO for a while when I was in Iraq.
Yeah. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. Yeah.
Yes. So there was an issue at the time. It was a drought issue. So I was working on kind of drilling wells, supplying villages to kind of mitigate the impact of the drought on the villages and the farmers. But I always had a sort of interest in soil and water. So that was a good opportunity to kind of do more in that space.
Yeah.
So when I kind of finished the work with the FAO, so I applied for a master degree in the UK.
Yeah.
So I did a master degree in sustainable environmental management with a specialization in water.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I was trying to kind of say, well, now I know where is my interest. Geology is quite a broad kind of a science. However, in the same time, I was more interested in sort of a new technologies and mapping technologies, specifically geographic information system, GIS.
Yeah.
So I tried to kind of combine the water interest with the GIS. So my master degree project was on combining both.
Combining all of those.
So this is where a little bit more interest started with the technology, if you like. Then I went back to Iraq. Excuse me. So I worked for a research organization for a while. Then I went back to England to do my PhD. So that was really the turning point. So, well, I'm interested in water and I'm interested in mapping and technology. So my PhD project was looking at the use of remote sensing, satellite imageries, GIS, image processing. And at the time, I'm talking about 2006, artificial intelligence was not a thing. However, we done a lot of image processing, machine learning. So I kind of worked in that kind of a space. So my project was to look at the irrigation of potatoes versus rain-fed. So in England, you can have a field is growing rain-fed potatoes. The next door farmer is growing potatoes with irrigated.
And what you're doing then with the remote sensing is comparing the plant, the potato plant, essentially, its growth, its colors, maybe.
Yeah. So basically, you look at the canopy reflection, and then you look at the reflection and trying to kind of create a signature that differentiate the irrigated from non-irrigated. And that was probably the first step, but also to understand the irrigation requirement and the linking into the climate change impact. So I looked at different scenarios. So, 2050, if these scenarios become a reality, what is the impact on irrigation and how the farmers can adapt into that kind of a scenario. So that's really take me until like 2010. Then I worked for an organization in the UK. There are different levy organizations. So farmers, they pay taxes like any businesses,
yeah.
but also they pay the levy.
Yeah.
So the levy is collected with a levy organization, and that money, it goes for research and knowledge transfer. It doesn't go anywhere else.
Interesting.
So I worked for Potato Council.
Yeah.
At the time it was called Potato Council, looking after the potato growers in the UK. And my first job was mostly looking at the market. I was working for the market intelligence, understanding how many hectares has been planted, what the market looks like, supply, demand. Then I moved to more cereal kind of a sector. And then it was actually during the formation of a new organization. So what they done, they brought all the levy bodies together and they created Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board, which is called AHDB. So AHDB currently covering all the sectors from potato, cereal, livestock. I don't think there is any aquaculture, but the main kind of sectors. So I worked in the cereal sector for about 4 years as a research manager. And then I went back into more soil, water, precision agriculture, environment in general. So I worked there for about 4 years. And then I moved to the private sector. So I work for a company called Agri Intelligence. They have a double I in their spelling. So I was a head of crop technology. So basically trying to bring the new technologies into a more commercial sort of offering. Then I did a couple of sort of a startup consultancy for a while. And then my last job in the UK, I was a chief technical officer of one of the agri-tech center. Which we covered livestock as well as crop.
Very cool.
And the idea for all the agri-tech sector center in the UK, it was a kind of a link between academia, startup, and the industry. So we were kind of doing similar kind of work with many companies, and we done some project in the UK, but also we done some international work as well. And then I joined Silal in 2021.
Then you found yourself here. Well, I can see there's a pattern. You do have a lot of agriculture and technology, even though maybe you didn't start with your degree in agriculture.
Correct.
Could you talk to me about how that relationship works in your eyes? You've been through remote sensing. You've been through, stock and data. You've been through water. What do you think is that relationship that resonates with you between technology and agriculture?
Yeah. So I think if you look at farming as an operation or as a process or a business or any other businesses, basically it's about decision making, right?
Yeah.
And we know if you have more data, more information, you can make better decisions.
Yeah.
And that's true for any sector or any kind of operation. So I think farmers and agriculture is just the same. What the technologies bring is that ability to capture more data and analyze data more effectively and more accurately and make a better decision, basically. And if you think about maybe a century ago or a couple of centuries ago, where the farmers is doing farming, it was a small scale. And as you as a farmer is very close to your land because that was the source of your livelihood. So your soil, your crop, your every inch of your farm very
very well,
very well in a very detail. And that was easy to make decision because they know where is the problem, how they can solve it. When the society grows and the agriculture is scaled up and you're managing a hectare or 10 hectares or 1,000 hectares, then your capability of capturing data is going to be far away from the land and from what happening in every inch. So you kind of scale up and now you are dealing with a much larger kind of operation. And that's really where the technology is coming in. So looking at irrigation as an example, if you have a half a hectare land, you working on this half a hectare every day is very different when
hundreds of hectares.
Hectares. So you need a different mechanism of capturing data. And then the problem will start when you are collecting more data. So how are you going to analyze it to get a knowledge and an information so you can make a better decision? So I think this is where we are not really very different from how we managed and how we operate farming from maybe 100 years ago. The only thing is the scale is going up, but in the meantime, the technologies is advancing as well. So that would...
In my mind, there's technology helps us bridge that gap between the sort of human scale farming and then that sort of larger scale, whether you call it industrial or, multiples of scales. And there's also a bridging of skills or at least knowledge. So when, head farmer who understands all the crops or the farm manager, and then there are farm hands that may not have that experience.
Correct.
Seeing the data, whether it's irrigation data or crop data, pest detection is a major thing as well for those large scale farms. It helps those decisions happen faster.
Yes.
And that ultimately is what's essentially resulting in, you get to head off the challenges early before you end up with a pest that is, for one reason or another, removing profit and returns from a farm. And I think it's one of those things where the natural world and technology meet that is always interesting for us because for all the technology in the world, you still have to deal with the weather. You still have to deal with the challenges of water and, nutrients in soil. So I hear where you're coming from and it's an exciting space.
Exactly. And you're right, absolutely right. I think the other thing is when we were in a small scale farming, disease as an example, that was a good example. Farmers at the time, they can take action and make decision when the disease already there. But the technology will give you that sort of advantage to predict things even before it happened. And disease still is probably quite a complex problem to deal with. But irrigation is a good example because you have a sensors, it tells you need to irrigate now because is the time the crop needed.
There's again, complexity in agriculture is one of those things that is always underestimated. And I have absolute admiration for anybody who does do any farming when they're dealing with multiple crops, they're dealing with seasons and how things change out here.
Absolutely. It's like, be a global CEO of a multinational companies because think about the life of farm and again, and I'm coming back to the decision because it's really important. If you look at how many decisions they need to make, right? So they need to be an agronomist. They need to know the biology, but they need to be the manager as well. They need to manage their finance, the market, the price, the cost, managing labor, managing machinery. And then in the same time, you have policies, regulation, right? So you need to comply with it. So you have a farmer in the center of multiple dimension of complexity. And I think in general, it seems like an easy kind of a work to do, but it's quite a complex because you're dealing with the climate and environment around you, and you're dealing with the biology, and you're dealing with the management, and you're dealing with the market. So handling and balancing all this is not an easy task.
And to sort of throw one more layer on that is that a lot of people still take food for granted. That it'll always be there, right? And there's a large effort from the farming community and the food producing community to make sure that not only is it produced, it's safe to eat, but that it then arrives with logistics and retailers at your
good quality.
Right time. Yeah, exactly. And we can get into that. But I'd ask maybe, so you've got a long experience between tech and agriculture. What would you say is the defining moment for when you built or shaped your perspective on how technology and agriculture should work together?
I think most of the technologies is developing or develop is important to understand this complexity, and that's really where you can add values because I think in the last maybe a couple of decades we've seen a lot of technologies coming and go. And the reason is because you are dealing with this complex system and you trying to simplify things. And that's really the human nature. When the problem is too difficult, a good example, if you are a farmer and your yield is not going up, maybe you try to apply a little bit more fertilizer, right? But the problem is not only the fertilizer, it might be fundamental issues in the soil, and then fundamental issues around your genetics and the varieties you are using. So I think this is where the technology and bringing that sort of tackling this complexity of the system, technology really has a chance to crack this. And I think nowadays all this advancement is easier to the other sector. When it comes to agriculture, you need to be very careful to see how we can build that sort of a comprehensive solution, or at least an approach or a strategy, how we tackle everything collectively, because otherwise we will miss something out of the equation that might have a huge impact. But I believe that in the last maybe a few decades, there were a few technological advancements that changed agriculture globally.
Like,
for example, GPS.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Because people might not think about it. We're looking at large scale farming or a global, farming in general. The problem prior GPS, all the information was not tagged back into the location.
Right.
But nowadays we have that capability.
It's taken for granted. I mean, everybody opens up their phone and they know where they're going.
Exactly.
They don't
like
have
a Google map, everyone has an
yeah.
access, right? But I think when the GPS become a public technology in the early 1990s, that changed the way we collecting data. And that allow us to, like, for example, now most of the machineries or the combiner harvesters, they have a yield map.
Yes.
So you have a 10,000 hectare farm, you are harvesting your wheat, and you have a clear map. Where is the high yielded area? Where is the low yielded area? And that piece of information is very, very important.
Critical.
Prior GPS, we couldn't have that access.
Not only that, when you're dealing with large scale farms, what is to be harvested and what needs another day.
Correct.
So that you're not taking out the whole field and you've got this distribution of call it ripeness or ready fruit, vegetables, what have you.
Exactly. Because this allows us to do a site-specific kind of a management. So you're not dealing... Because if you have a large field, for example, there is a lot of variation in soil and the way the crop is performing.
The geography.
It's a geography. So that's why my first degree in GIS was very... my master's, it was very relevant, because the GIS will give you that capability to bring the information back into... a specific location.
Right.
And that's really, that was, in my view, it was a transformative in terms of agriculture and data and the technology kind of coming into the sector in a better way.
Yeah. And it makes me think now, you've worked for a long time in the UK and now you're working here in the UAE. I wonder how in your observation between the UK innovation in agriculture and ag tech, as they call it, and here in the UAE, what do you think are maybe the defining differences between the two, and what are we looking at with your challenges today?
Sure. I think obviously every country has their own kind of a specification, if you like, when it comes to any sector. So in the UK, for example, look at the sector, the farm size is much larger. The farmer themselves, they're much more advanced in integrating technologies, machineries, and all of that, because they need to. When it comes to the innovation and technology side, you are kind of looking at a country with hundreds of years of science and research. And that's really in the DNA of businesses as well. So, most of the big companies, they have a huge investment.
A lot of their growth was based on
exactly,
on that,
because this is the pipeline of bringing new solutions, new technology, creating new jobs, creating new companies. So I think in that aspect, obviously there are differences. UAE is a younger country. However, the ambition and the level of how can I say this, is the level of drive to transform, not only in agriculture or farming,
across
but
the whole
across
country.
the whole sector is substantial. So I think things, it might happen in UK or other countries a little bit slower. Gradual. You take times, and the innovation in UAE is in a full speed, and I think that's really one probably a difference. But the other thing is, because of this openness and access to the global talent, knowledge, and technology, we are in a really right time and a right place to say, well, if there is a technologies happening and developing in US or China or Europe, you could access and you can bring here. And I think the question is how that technology is relevant to us and how we can adapt it to our climate, to our country, that can help our own farmers, because not all the technologies can be transferred directly. So I think there are differences in that sense, but I think there is advantage in the way we organize our own R&D and innovation pipeline compared to what happening in the UK.
So as you're mentioning it, we're actually filming here in the Silal Innovation Oasis. And I think people who are watching, people who are listening, are also wondering, why build a facility like this? What does the Innovation Oasis solve in terms of a challenge?
Sure. So I think I can go back to the early days when I joined Silal in 2021. It was middle of COVID, basically. Again, Silal is a young company. We are only 5 years old. So when I came, and obviously coming from the UK, working in agriculture, technology, as we discussed, is a very different sort of a very different system and setup from what happening in the UAE, for example. So I think in the first 6 months or maybe even a year, my kind of idea was just to go out, talk to people, who's doing what the farming looks like. We visited many farms in Western region, in Abu Dhabi, in Al Ain and other Emirates as well. Just trying to understand the sort of the structure and the setup. And then when you do that sort of like a mapping the ecosystem, and you're thinking, okay, there are many interesting research organization, universities, academia in general. They're doing their own research, which is great, important, all of that. But in the meantime, you have the farming communities here as well. And then you have businesses and companies, which I believe mostly when it comes to innovation, okay, we as a business, we have this challenge in a business. What is out there? Let's go and map globally.
Let's find it.
Let's find it. We'll bring it. We will implement it, and that will solve the problem. That might be the case in other sectors, which is fine. I mean, if you are in, I'm just using an example. If you are in energy or banking, or it's a very transferable sector. However, in agriculture, that's different, as we discussed. It's a very complex, weather, climate, the challenge of lack of natural resources, soil, water, and all of that is very different. So we were kind of thinking, well, actually, there is a gap here. And the gap is not only translating the academic kind of a research and science, but also developing a practical and commercial applications. Because I think that's the gap. I always worked in that kind of a interface.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
Even in the UK, when I finished my PhD, I never worked in the universities as a researcher. I was more into a commercial or R&D space. So I thought there is a gap here. And we want, as a Silal, we want to play a role in the food security agenda for the UAE, and we are one of the player in this space. And actually, for us to have a secure food system, we need to understand where is our problems and where is our challenge. And for us to identify these problems and challenges, we need to have a pipeline of innovation and R&D, and that's really where we we're very lucky in a sense that we have a fantastic shareholder and with a vision to say, well, actually, we need to have a capability. So building Innovation Oasis is bridging this gap, but also creating an ecosystem. If you are a startup working on a technology in Mexico or in Europe that has an application in a desert farming, it's very difficult for you to come here. You might need a office space, you need a lab, you need a trial facility. There are many other organizations doing stuff. I'm not saying we are the only one, but the thing is, maybe one organization doing one thing. They have a lab. The other one, they have a trial facility.
Yes.
The other one, but what we try to do is we brought in everything in one place.
Yeah, one-stop shop, as
is
it
a
were.
one-stop shop, is an ecosystem. Is not only the capabilities we invested, in terms of labs and, the lands and the trials and the pilot, but also an ecosystem of collaborators from startup to multinational to university. So that's really the concept, to become a global leader when it comes to the agri-tech desert innovation.
So I want to give a little bit of context to what you're saying. At SOMA, we see a lot of startups come through to us looking for where they can find a place either to engage or to find clients. And there's a challenge where, well, you've just arrived in the country. You have a technology, but it hasn't been tested. It hasn't been verified. People are a little reluctant maybe to take a chance. So finding a place where that can be done in a setting where their technology will be tested in a real environment is important, but more so also where they can meet peers as well as the companies that are suffering the challenges they're trying to solve.
Yeah.
I think that's been a real important piece for us, is to say, well, now the Innovation Oasis is here. You need to go and see them because they will have the majority of what you need. But it reminds me also that there's a challenge for anybody who has a startup or research and innovation on how do you go from there to a sort of commercialization and adoption, right?
Yeah.
What does that journey look like? And maybe you could shed some light on what you guys are doing.
I think in general, when it comes to the agri-tech startup sort of ecosystem, if you look back in the last maybe a decade or so, there is many companies starting looking at different technologies. And I think one of the issues we mentioned was sometimes the startup will get kind of into the development very much without understanding the real problem.
Yes,
so there is some fundamental issues there. We've seen many companies with a fantastic technologies or a great softwares and apps and services. And then when they're almost kind of ready and thinking, what is the problem I'm solving and for whom and who's going to pay for this? Because this is a commercial
That's a fundamental
service.
challenge.
You need to start from the problem. And I think always my advice to anyone we're talking to, say, what is the real problem you're trying to solve and who is your customer or the one who's going to pay for this, because you are solving a problem, you are taking away the pain point. And that problem, it might be a time or it might be a financial, either you're increasing your yield, your profitability, all of that, or you're taking the hassle out of farmers' operation, as we discussed. It's quite a complex system to manage. So I think there is some issues around that area as well. And sometimes the technology moving much faster than the science.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So you kind of taking one idea, I think is great, but still there is a little bit more technical validation or development need to happen in order to do that. So I think there is a couple of things like that. The other thing is for us to create an ecosystem where the innovation happen, the startup can come in and work with us. I think we need to create a innovation ecosystem in a general sense as well. So what you need for that, you need a top talent researchers and scientists to do the sort of not the very fundamental but applied research that can be taken into the next level and create a product and services. So you need that sort of a science research ecosystem in the country, which we have. And we can reach out to our global partners as well. And then you need this kind of individuals that can take a risk and building a company and building a startup, which require a different type of support. So, is there anyone who support you to develop your ideas to set up a company? Is there an ecosystem to support you to understand how you might be very good technically, but you are not a commercially minded, you don't know how to manage business, what your business model looks like, how you charge customers, what your cash flow is going to look. All of that sort of a business related skill set is need to be supported. And then there is a question of finance and grants and funding. And I think that's really one of the areas in the UAE, there is a lot of finance and funding and investment, but one thing is quite not there yet is the grant funding that is not an investment, is just to encouraging people to take that risk. You de-risking that sort of a stage, if you like. And I think when you cover all of that, and then you need a place like Innovation Oasis that can allow you to do your product into the next level and take it into a more ready for commercialization. However, there is a very big gap, what they call a value of death.